Arthur, tell me, what was your first reaction when you found out your friend stole a Rodin statue?
It was I can't believe what he what he did in the way he did it. Just I think looking back, Stephen was, we're I'll take this back to the 70s. Okay, that's how far this goes back. He when we were in grade school together, he was the kind of kid if you drew a line in the sand, he'd cross it and taunt you.
Mm-hmm.
So he just had that personality. He kind of looked like a little James Dean kind of kid, very smart, but always in trouble, always in trouble. And we didn't know, uh, he was always the guy you were like, hey man, calm down, everything's cool. What's going on? And his engine just kept running. So when we were kids, that's the way it was. And then after third grade, things really changed. It got really dark. He had a situation. I don't want to get into that right now, but he had a very difficult situation and got PTSD. He was also ADHD and bipolar. So he's undiagnosed for all those things as he
Oh,
was
wow.
growing up prior to stealing the Rodan. So when he was still before he stole the Rodan, he was a truck driver,
Uh-huh.
and he was a thief, and he was stealing primarily to support a self-medicating drug habit because he was bipolar. So you're always trying to level out, and you don't know you're bipolar, so you're just doing all this stuff. And he wasn't the kind of guy who was like, yeah, I'm going to therapy. That
Right.
wasn't happening. So
So when he stole the statue, this
mhm,
Rodin is a big famous statue.
yeah.
Do you know, did he do it for money or did he do it for the thrill or was he really into art or what is the motivation?
So the motivation was he was a thief, and there was a fence that had contacted him and his partner and said, somebody wants the Rodin statue mask of the man with a broken nose from the Philadelphia Art Museum. Now, Rodin made several of these statues. Okay. And there is a fascinating antidote to the story I'll tell you later on. But he made several of these statues. And this one was in the Philadelphia Art Museum. There's a Rodin section of the Philadelphia Art Museum right near where the Rocky statue is, down on the ground, on the ground floor, not up the stairs anymore. They used to have it upstairs. Now it's down on the ground. But
Okay.
the Rodin section was actually built first. Just a little bit of history.
Yeah.
And so it was in there. He had never done anything like this before, and he was terrified. He was like, "No, I'm not doing it. You can kick a rock." And then he was the isolation. I think from driving trucks. He had a five-state local, so he could drive all around to many states, but it was all local. So he'd always come back home. So he would
Mhm.
drive work, drive work, maybe hang out a little bit, that kind of thing. And he was beat up and alone and had a very solitary life because of the situation with his family. And yeah, that was his life at the time. So when they asked him, he was like, no, I'm not doing it. And then like 6 months later, he was like, I want to buy a house. That would, that money could be a great amount of cash towards a down payment on a
How much
house.
do you know how much they were going to pay for the Rodin?
No, I don't know what they were going to pay for the Rodeo. He
Okay.
he doesn't go into some details because I feel like Steven is somebody who is protects a lot of the people that he was involved in. If there's honor amongst thieves, I don't know, but I don't know how that works. But he on the podcast, he's very specific. Going into the podcast, he was very specific about what he would talk about and what he wouldn't talk about.
Okay.
Um, One of the fascinating things is with Stephen is that he's actually, I think, somebody who would have been a really decent person. And I don't even know how to describe that. I mean, stealing makes somebody not a decent person. You know what I mean? But if you're his friend, you would never know what he did or anything like that. He's always been a generous friend. A lot of fun, that
And
kind of guy.
you knew him since second grade, right?
Yeah, our mothers owned King. There's a King place called King of Prussia, was a suburb of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
King of Prussia, next to Valley Forge, where George Washington trained all the troops and all that kind of stuff. So our mothers owned stores in the King of Prussia Mall, and his mom was like a 5'10" Farrah Fawcett with force. She's like this powerful. Walk into a room, traffic stop dead. Right, she was
Okay.
one of those, and not meek about it, just strong, smart, intelligent, that kind of person. Um, and she owned a dress shop in the King of Prussia Mall, and my mom owned a flower shop in the King of Prussia Mall. And we ran around. We kind of met between there and second grade. Hey, little mall rats running around the mall, playing, going to the arcade, playing games, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay. So, and when he did this art heist, were you
Mhm.
guys still close at that time?
Yeah, we were friends. So the way it goes, like back in the 70s, when his mom would pick up and move all the time. So he would disappear, and in the 70s, when you move, you changed your phone number changed. You couldn't keep the same phone number because you moved to a
Mhm.
different area code, right? Or
Mhm.
you had to pay to keep the same phone number. And I guess, she didn't want to do that or whatever. I don't know. But that's how it was in the 70s. Very different than, there were no smartphones, there were no Snapchat, there was no internet.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
a different time. So he would move, and I don't know about you, but there's some people in your life, wherever you are, you constantly run into these people. So no
Mhm.
matter where I was, I would always run into Steven, or somebody from my family would run into Steven. We lived in the burbs for a while. We moved into the city, and then he and his mom moved into the city as well. So then we
Mhm.
would always cross paths, and we'd always just be hanging out. As we got older, we would, prior to stealing Rodan, we'd hang out in bars, hang out with girls, run around, hang out in the city, that kind of thing. When I came to town, I was usually in the city, 2, 3 times a year. I've done that for, I don't know, since 1986, since I moved to LA. So I'm back in Philly. I'm still a Philly boy at heart, man. I'm back in Philly a
Yeah,
lot. Love
cool.
that place.
So how, do you know how old was he when he stole the Rodan and how did he do it?
He's 24. So when I'm trying to, how should I say this? When he first decided to say, "Hey, I'm all in. I'm going to do this." Um, what he did was he went and scoped out the museum, right? Okay. So he scoped out the museum, like, yeah, I could do it. He came up with a plan. Uh, he went in, executed the plan. I'm not going to go into all that, but I will say this: what he did do, uh, is he fired, according to the FBI, he fired the first shot, uh, in a museum art heist in since like the early 1900s.
Wow. And did he act alone or did he plan this with others?
He planned it with others,
Okay.
and he was the only one eventually who got caught by the FBI. So,
So tell what can you tell us about how it all went down? He,
this way I can tell you, he was involved with a couple of people. They stole them. They stole. He stole the statue, and it created a huge incident in Philadelphia. Um, when I found out about him stealing the Rodan, I was like, you gotta be, there's no way Steven stole the Rodan out of because that's instant see you later, bye, you're going to jail. If they catch you, that's a wrap for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, and when he did it, I was just blown away. Remember my mom and my mom's second husband, Judson, uh, they called me and told me, and I was just like, like when you hear this news and it just hits you like a ton of bricks. So not long after he stole it, I came back to talk to his mother, who was, not in a good shape at this time. And she was telling me, I have no idea who would do it. Why would he do this, Arthur? Da, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm sitting in a chair. I don't know. Like it just blew my mind. So that was my take. There were, he had a business partner, um, and they, Stephen is the only one that went to jail. Let's put it that way. So
Okay. He's the only one that wouldn't flip, is what I'm picking up from that story.
yeah, he did not flip. He didn't dime anybody out. He actually he got out on bail. And when he's on bail, he did some other wild stuff and they arrested him and threw him in jail for 10 years.
Okay.
I can tell you here's an interesting story. Stephen is also a bank robber. So he went to jail for the Rodan.
Yeah.
The, you never want to go to jail. You don't want to ever go to jail. Uh, his second stint in jail. So he did two stints in jail, one for 10 years, one for 15 years for robbing banks. His second stint in jail on his 50th birthday, and you can Google this crime. July, what is it? July 16, 2015. So July 16, 2015, he turned 50. 2 days before that, two men walk into a museum in Copenhagen, okay, where there are multiple masks of the man with a broken nose. Like I said, Rodin made several of these statues. They scope it out. They're two white guys, they're in hats and all this kind of stuff. And they scope it out and walk out. Museum's jam packed with people, right? They come back on his 50th birthday, right? Steal the Rodin in broad daylight. That Rodin has never been recovered. Those two men have never been caught.
Wow.
So in our podcast, in my interviews with Steven, I'm like, yes, so this is awfully coincidental. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't know anything about it. I said, come on, man. You just give me a little something. He's like, yeah, dude, what are you trying to get me put in jail again? So his life is very coincidental. I can't say, there's only so much I can say. And yeah,
So, all right. So, anyone that wants to Google this, what's his full name?
Stephen Warburton Shy, Shih. So
Gotcha.
there's not a lot of information on him about
Mhm.
stealing the Rodan.
Yeah.
But I can tell you when somebody who grew up, King of Prussia is a really nice neighborhood outside of Philadelphia. He moved in town. His mom was a realtor. Um, she was making money. They always had a cool place to live. He lived in a very nice lifestyle. Uh, and Stephen, like I said, had kind of James Dean look about him. And when you go to jail for your first time, that's a big deal.
Do you know how old he was when he first went to jail? He was 24 when he stole the Rodan, and did he get caught real quick after that?
No, it took the FBI several, like 6 8 months to catch him. So he was
Gotcha.
hiding in Rodan, like digging up holes in his backyard, that kind of stuff. Blah
Oh,
blah
so
blah blah.
the fence never took it from him?
It got too hot.
Got too
Uh,
hot.
yeah,
Ah,
which
man.
is, I'm always like, well, if the fence was good, like why would he say steal a Rodan? Because that's going to be a big deal. It's a Rodan. So basically, you have an international incident, and he's running around his backyard hiding Rodan, and hiding it all over the city.
And did you guys know it was him before he got caught? Like when you went back to talk to his mom,
Oh no, when I went back to talk to his mom, he had already,
he was already locked up.
yeah, he was locked up. Yeah.
Okay, so and I know we got the crazy story of him becoming a bank robber. So what happens? He goes to jail for 10 years.
So here, let me just give you an example of somebody like Stephen being in jail. Okay. Because jail, people kind of go, oh, he went to jail. Okay. And we all know jail's a horrible place. But I'll give you an example of him being locked in the hole.
Mhm.
Okay. So you can get locked in the hole for getting in a fight. You can get locked in the hole for doing all kinds of dumb stuff, talking wrong to a guard, anything that required discipline, you can go to the hole for. So when he's first in the hole, he's locked in there for a long time, several weeks. And now he has uh, ADHD, right? He's bipolar, and and he's got a myriad of mental issues that he's trying to deal with, and they lock him in a hole. So he's in there, and I'm like, well, what do they give you to read? They don't give me anything to read. Basically, you sit in a 6 by 9 cell by yourself with the door closed, hearing other people sometimes scream, yell. He said he asked a priest that was down there for a Bible. Guy said, "Yeah, I'll bring you back a Bible." Guy never came back. He would always walk around another way, talk to other people, but he never came back and gave Stephen a Bible. He said he
Jeez.
saw a guy who was in a guard rip up a letter from somebody from inmates family, just rip it up and tear it up right in front of him and drop it on the floor. So you're in here 24 hours a day with no human contact. I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, he says you basically just try not to go crazy. So finally, after multiple times being in a hole and being in a hole a long time, he started doing Tai Chi, he started meditating, and then
Okay.
he started getting to the position where, hey, look, you're going to come by and taunt me, and I'm not even going to pay attention to you. But in order
Okay.
to get there, it's a lot of suffering to
Yeah.
get there. So the
Yeah.
whole that's just an example, one example. We have a lot of examples in the podcast about being in jail, how violent it is. Um, and that kind of a thing. It's a very violent place. He wasn't built for that kind of situation. He had to go in there and learn it from, like anybody else, go in there and learn it. But he wasn't going in there trying to rule the roost or anything. He's just trying to survive.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of white guys in jail.
Mm.
you know, so
So when he gets out, what leads him to the bank robbery story?
he uh he fell in love with a woman. Um,
Was that while he was in jail or after he got out?
this is when he got out of jail. He falls in love with a woman. She breaks his heart, and he had been out for a while, so he's wanted to kill himself and couldn't quite get around to doing that. So he decided, I'm gonna rob banks.
It was going to be like a suicide by cop kind of thing.
Well, at the end, yeah, until somebody called and said, "Hey, you're on TV."
How
So,
many banks did he rob? Do you know?
like three or four.
Okay, and he got
Um,
away with it.
yeah, yeah.
How?
He, had to tune into the podcast. He got it. He got away with it. So he robs these banks. He gets a call like, okay, I got to get out of here. He goes and resets somewhere, and then decides he's going to run because he doesn't want to go out in a blaze of glory. So he finds his way to Tijuana and pays somebody to get him across the border. Now, meanwhile, the FBI, he's being looked for. Uh,
Hmm.
and he decides he's going to go from Tijuana to Costa Rica walking and catching buses. Now, that's about 3,000 miles. Plus, you have to cross many borders. So, that in itself is a movie, which is there's a whole episode in our podcast about his trip to Mexico, almost getting killed, all that kind of stuff. It's a fascinating
It,
story.
it in that chapter when he's hitchhiking from Tijuana to Costa Rica,
Mhm.
is he mostly like kind of laying low and hiding, or is he just kind of living free and kind
No,
of like,
he's actually living free because he's traveling with the locals on these local buses.
yeah,
He's just kind of
yeah,
hanging out, like, yeah,
yeah,
okay, this is great.
kind of fun,
Um,
kind of touristy and kind of fun, right?
well, I don't know about fun, but he's he's pretty sure that nobody's going to go like, oh yeah, we're going to arrest you.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? He kind of looks like them. He's got a tan. He's got a mustache. He's dressed like them. Kind of not, well, not quite dressed like them, but he kind of has that vibe. He's, he's just in the flow with the locals, and the locals, because he's not, doesn't have heirs, the locals just respect him and try to help him learn the language and that kind of stuff.
Do you know how much cash he has on him? Does he got a whole bunch of bank
Uh,
robbery cash?
I have no idea, but he does have some. He had some cash in his boot. He had to. He pays people to get across one border. There's multiple ways he has to get across a few borders where the stories are pretty interesting. So,
Yeah. So he gets out of prison for the Rodan. He gets
hmm
a girlfriend. He gets his heart broken.
yeah.
He becomes suicidal. His in his sort of suicidal state, he decides to become a bank robber. He gets away with 3 or 4 bank robberies, but then flees to Tijuana. Then from Tijuana, he hitchhikes to Costa Rica. And what happens from there?
He gets to Costa Rica. He's hanging out. Life is good, and I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, he is in Costa Rica, has no extradition. So, and I won't go into the details, but 4 or 5 months later, he is sent back to the U.S. Uh,
Okay.
and there is an argument on the tarmac of the Philadelphia airport between Department of Homeland Security and the FBI because he has no paperwork. In Costa Rica, you can't extradite from Costa Rica. And the FBI is like, yeah, well, he's a bank robber. Uh, so he lost that battle and they put him in jail.
Did he? So they found him in Costa Rica. Did he get betrayed, or did he slip up in some way?
That's where you're gonna have to tune in, pal.
That's gonna be on the podcast as well.
That's on the podcast, buddy. That's on the
Okay.
podcast. I can't do the whole podcast on your show.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's where he gets apprehended. They bring him back. And then there's the reality that he's never going to get out of jail. Because he's a violent offender. He used a firearm and he actually fired a firearm in the art museum heist. And when he goes back this time for robbing banks, it's like, yeah, dude, good luck getting parole. Now, one of the things I can talk about is when he was in jail the second time,
Mhm.
he saw a dog being trained, and he was like, whoa, that spoke to his soul. And the dog was brought in by Hope, Hounds of Prison Education. Um, and in order to train dogs, be a prisoner and train dogs, you have to go 2 years without having an incident to sign up. So, of course, he tries to go 2 years, screws that up, screws that up. It took him a few years
Took him a
longer than
few
2 years.
tries.
Yeah, yeah. It took him a few tries to get in the program, and then they finally signed him up in the program. Now, you have to understand this is somebody who's lived a pretty solitary life, and is terrified of losing, uh, doesn't want to be victimized, and especially does not want his heart broken by
Mhm.
anybody or animal or anything. And he
Mhm.
knows if he joins this program, he's going to be training dogs and he's going to fall in love with the dogs that he trains. And he's going to have to give them up because they put the dogs up for adoption,
Mhm.
100% success rate with adoptions, right?
Mhm.
So he knows that dog is see you later, bye. So he's struggling with, how do I go in here from a not emotionally sound place, because he's still undiagnosed uh, for being bipolar and the other issues that he has, and he's hasn't had any treatment. He goes to see therapists to tell them what, something along the lines of what they need to hear so he can get the drugs to level himself out, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's where he is mentally. A very delicate situation. So when he gets his first dog, it's his beat up, just traumatized, beat up dog that can't even
Mhm.
look him in the eye. It's terrified, right? So the dog, he gets the dog, walks the dog down to his cell, and the dog opens the cell door, and he's got a little cage. Dog runs right into the little cage, doesn't come out at all except to, eat and he drags it to the yard, to go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
So one morning or one night, he's in bed reading, and he feels this little wet nose in his ear, and this dog is like sniffing his nose. So dog, he looks at the dog. Dog runs in his cage. He leaves it alone. I don't know. A couple weeks later, dog's laying by his feet. Pretty soon, they start to develop this bond, and he's able to start training this dog. When he has to give the dog away, he gives it away to one of the guards who was really, I'm pretty sure it's a prison guard, who was really interested in the dog. And, soon the dog became Steven's protector and barking at everybody and leaving this is my guy, leave him alone. You know what I mean? And the prison
Mhm.
guard gave him treats and all that kind of stuff. And the prison guard uh, adopts him, and Steven loses it, cries like a baby, just loses it. Like, this
Mm.
is real love and loss. But what he learned from the dog and what the program tries to teach prisoners is trust, okay, um, and how to care for something and be responsible and those kind of things. And in Steven's case, the big deal was learning from the dog. If this beat up dog can learn to trust me, I can learn to trust people again.
Wow.
So that was a big deal for him. And to this day, he has two rescue dogs right now. And he raises money for the Hope Foundation, which is absolutely incredible. So he goes out to their events, raises money. He does podcasts for them. I just listened to a podcast he did a couple of weeks ago for the Hope Foundation, him and other prisoners. So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
so he did 15 years for the bank robberies and he's back
mhm.
out now?
He's back out now. He is married and has a uh, pretty cool life that he's worked really hard to make cool. He's gone to therapy,
Mhm.
and he's done extensive amount of therapy. And on the podcast, we have his wife is on the podcast, as well as he's given permission um, to his psychologist to be interviewed, and we've interviewed the psychologist. So she pops up.
Wow.
She pops up quite a bit on the podcast to talk about his mental situation, where he's at, what's happening here, really breaking down the
I would love
psychology.
to yeah, I would love to hear what she has to say.
Yeah,
Is there
she's incredible. Yeah.
what are some of the things that were like most interesting or surprising that she said about the whole situation?
There, I can't share that with you. That's on the podcast, and that stuff is fascinating, man. Like,
Yeah.
she's just like, and she's very smart and very comfortable speaking.
Mhm.
So yeah, she's pretty powerful. She's pretty powerful, and it really gives an insight as to um, what a lot of people who are in jail are going through, whatever their situation. Now, I'm not saying people who commit crimes don't deserve to go to jail. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are a lot of people in jail because of their circumstances, okay, and they haven't figured out how to deal with those circumstances, so they just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. When he went
Mhm.
to jail the second time, he was ashamed of himself, like, just completely like, here I am. But the weird thing is he felt comfortable there, and he was scared of that. He was like, "You got to be kidding me. This is home. This is home."
Very, very interesting. I was going to ask you because I know you've interviewed him very extensively, and it's interesting that you say he felt shame. Because I was actually going to ask if in all your interviews has he expressed regret, pride, shame, or
Yeah, yeah. We asked him when we asked him before we started doing the podcast and test. We were doing test interviews, so he would get used to being interviewed in this kind of way. It's really hard for people to talk about themselves, especially when they've done bad things. You know what I mean?
mm,
Because they're
mm,
staring at the mirror the whole time, or they've been victimized.
mhm.
They're staring at that mirror, so it's very hard. Um, so what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just if he had expressed any regret or pride
Yes.
or
So we
shame.
so, so we asked him, we said, why do you want to do this? He says, because I want people to know that you don't have to go down the road that I went down. You can get help. there's help out there, and I want them to understand through all the running and the running away from the crimes that I committed. I went, that was never necessary. Like I
Wow.
could have got help. So I think for somebody to be um in that place in their life where they say, I could have gotten help. I never should have done this stuff. Yeah, like yeah, he's an advocate for mental health awareness.
Yeah.
He's definitely an advocate for that. He's an advocate for the dogs because the dogs train prisoners how to adapt to life again, how to be responsible and caring, um, and you know how to help and get and receive help as well. So,
Yeah, yeah. And is that help mostly like through therapy and that kind of thing?
therapy, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in jail who have certain mental illness. There's a
Mhm.
lot of people in jail with mental illness, untreated mental, undiagnosed, untreated. You know, and then they get pulled into the psych's office. Like, "Yeah, what do you want? You're just part of the system." So it's how do you break down these walls, and you know, how do you change the institution, right? So it actually is dealing with the problem, just not punishing people. Like you need, yeah, some of these people, yeah, you need some of these crimes. People need to be in jail. Like no question about that. But the question is there any room for any type of rehabilitation or is it just violence? Because jail is a violent, like when you hear the podcast, you'll understand like jail is an extremely violent place. It is not, it's there's a reason why they put people in prison.
Is the podcast out yet?
No, it's not out. We have just gotten a sign off on him. He's listened to the assembly of it. We have to clean it up a little bit and then we'll be taking it out for a little stroll in the world.
Cool, man. Well, you'll have to keep me posted on that so I can update the listeners. I'm sure people are like, tell us what it's called. Where can we find it?
Yeah,
Do you have a
we'll
working title for it or not yet?
work no, not yet. We'll have a
Okay.
working title soon. I just don't want to lose the title now that I want to make sure we got every all our ducks in line and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I was also going to ask, maybe you can't answer this one either, but I was going to say if the story was turned into a movie, what do you call that movie?
Nice try. We're going for an 8-part limited series. And that's what we're going for. I'll leave that there. We feel
Okay.
we feel pretty confident we got a shot at getting a part limited series. It's a fantastic story. Stephen, his journey in life is like one I've never heard before. I've been
Hmm.
in Hollywood since 1986, and I've heard all kinds of stories, and some of them are absolutely fabulous. And this is definitely one of the ones where you go like, "What? Like, how is this possible?" It's just that kind
Yeah.
of story. So, yeah,
Very cool, man. Well, when you get the title to the podcast and the info, definitely shoot me a text because what I can do is I can add it to the description of the episode.
hmm
Even after this episode comes out, I can go back and I can put a little edit in and I can add it in so people can find it.
perfect.
So
Appreciate it.
just text me when you get all that info.
Yeah,
When do you know when that might be, or we don't know yet?
I I don't think it's going to be too far out. We're just like I said, we're trying to clean it up and do some. I got to go back and do a couple other little recordings on it and add a few things from my side and just yeah, big deal is making sure we're all cleaned up and tight. So with the
Yeah,
recording,
man.
yeah. So
Cool, man. So, well, thanks for coming on and sharing about all your friend and his wild story. Tell
can
me
I guess
where you
what's up?
been? Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
I wanted to give a shout out to Cleveland, Ohio. A guy named Marquette Williams is a filmmaker who I've known not very well, but I've known him since like 2013. And he had a place called Greenhouse Studios. Now he has started a foundation in Cleveland. I filmed 216 to the foundation is a workforce development foundation. So basically, what this foundation does, it um, trains people from the inner city in Cleveland how to work in film business, how to work in the film business.
Cool.
So he asked me to invited me to sit on his board. And I was like, well, let me come down to Cleveland and check this out, man. I'm so curious. Like, so I flew down to Cleveland last week or over to Cleveland last week. He picks me up at the airport. First of all, there's no traffic in Cleveland. Like, it's not like LA. Like it's rush hour, 5:30, and we're flying around on the freeway. We get to the studio, open up the door, and bam, these students are shooting a short film. Like in
Cool.
the midst of, so you're quiet, going through the whole thing. While I was there, they shot two or three things. They shot a like an infomercial on these two doctors. They shoot commercials. He shot a whole movie. Um, and which is incredible using workforce development people. He shot an independent movie down there,
Wow. Is
and
it out
we're
yet?
no, and I'm blocking the name. He's gonna kill me. Uh, God, Interval is the name of the movie.
Okay.
It is a science fiction movie, a Loba independent science fiction movie, and they shot it using workforce development people along with other trained filmmakers. But a lot of the work was done by workforce development people, and there's some. I was down there 3 days, and I talked to so many talented people who are just dying to get into the business, and they're all working through. Like I said, he uses it for commercials, he uses it for everything he does. They're involved. Um, they shoot commercials for the city, for the bus station, for like the buses. They're amazing. It's it's people being trained to work in the film industry. And Ohio has a really cool tax credit. So they're big companies. Netflix shoots in Ohio all the time. So
Mhm, mhm.
um it's a really cool place. And I was just blown. I came away from there like on a high, man, where because you realize we're in this bubble in LA and we're surrounded, we've worked in the film business. We're surrounded by this and we've worked in it. I've worked in it my whole adult life. But to see new people wanting to jump in and working really hard to get there and talent emerging out of that group. And you're like, what do you need? How can I help you? It's
Yeah.
really cool. It's something to see.
Cool. So you're on the board there, and you said it's called
No, I haven't.
iFilm?
I haven't. I haven't signed the paperwork to be on the board. They asked me to be on the board, and like there's certain steps you have to go through. So I'm going through the steps to sit on the board. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I'm sure they appreciate the shout out anyways. And you said it's called
yeah,
iFilm 216?
yeah,
iFilm 216.
yeah. And it is when I tell you when I tell you the enthusiasm and the talent, like it's crazy. It's a beautiful thing. So
Cool, man. Well, I'll look up their website. I'm guessing it's like iFilm216 or something.com, but I'll look it up and I'll
yeah,
throw it in the
ifilm216.com.
yeah, I'll throw that in the description for anyone that wants to check that out.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, man, thanks for coming on the podcast.